Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, the power of the pause. I was chatting to a friend the other day and saying that I was resisting doing a piece of writing work, designing work. And he said, well, why are you resisting it? I said, well, I'm resisting it because it might not be any good. It might not be well received. And he said, well, you do know that you can always design it and write it and then not show it to anybody. You can just pause after you've done the piece of creation before you let anyone else see it, which of course I know. But when he said this to me, part of my soul relaxed and sighed in relief. In that reminder that it's okay to pause. And I think in our Western world in particular, we can get so wedded to the idea of being productive and of keeping going that we forget about the importance and the power of pausing. Years ago, when one of the things I was doing was training people in giving presentation skills training. And I remember before that, I was being trained in giving presentations, so I could then be trained in how to train other people to do that. And we had this long series of sessions actually, that I found extremely painful, because in these sessions, we were learning how to take a piece of written material that we were going to be presenting and how to pause in certain places. And these places we'd marked on the sheet. So you get out there, you'd start talking, and you would pause at certain specific points that you'd pre-chosen you were going to pause. And I remember this being incredibly painful, because there was a strong part of me that thought, if I pause, I won't be able to carry on. If I pause, I won't be able to re-begin. A bit like not knowing the difference between the pause button and the stop button. And I remember standing there in front of all my peers who were all sitting in rows watching me while the trainer was coaching me in front of the group. And it was so painful. It was almost like my body became twice the weight it normally was. And at the same time, I was hot all the way through my chest. My jaw felt tight. I was hot in the face. I can remember it now. Very, very painful experience. And all I was doing was practicing delivering a piece of information and pausing at strategic points. Now, some of you listening to this or watching this may have had similar experiences when you went through some sort of training around giving presentations, so pauses being really important. And obviously that's a manufactured situation where you're artificially pausing. But noticing our resistance to that, noticing how difficult it is quite telling. Because I think that is connected to the fact that this conditioning I just mentioned, which is just to keep going. And the other thing is, if we're working in a way whereby the only thing that keeps us going is our momentum and our drive and our pushing ourselves, then it could be that if we do pause, we will actually grind to a sickening, crunching halt. Purely because the momentum is the thing keeping us going. And that if we stop, we're just going to slump because our energy is running out. Whereas if we just keep going, we can override the fact that our energy is running out. So in order to really get in touch with the power of the pause and to use it powerfully and effectively, we need to be in a reasonably resourced state. We need to be reasonably well rested. We need to be reasonably well grounded within ourselves. We need to be reasonably at peace with ourselves. Otherwise, the pause becomes a sickening, crunching halt, or a shock, or a jarring experience, or we lose touch with what we're trying to do. In other words, the pause could derail us otherwise, but it only derails us in a situation where what we're doing is in a form of disconnection from who we really are and how we really are in that moment. So in other words, what the pause does, one of the things it does, is it undoes illusion. It undoes any kind of fake, inauthentic persona or presence or mode that we may be presenting to the world, or that we may be presenting to ourselves in the way that we are interacting with our tasks, our physical universe, and our life in general. So the people who tend to find it most difficult to pause are the people who are, and this is a sweeping generalization, and if this isn't you, then this isn't you. But in general, those of us who find it the hardest to pause are those who are running hardest away from our actual lived experience. Because a pause puts us in touch with our lived experience. Because it takes away the distractions, whether it's the distraction of our own voice, our own activity, or the distraction of other information coming towards us and other stimulus and noise and colors and light and images and everything coming towards us. So if you're somebody who finds it really hard to pause, whether it's while speaking, as I'm pausing, perhaps a little bit more deliberately in this conversation than usual to illustrate the point, or if you're someone who finds it difficult to pause in your work or in playing with your children or in lovemaking or in exercise or in a creative endeavor, if you find pausing really inaccessible for you or very difficult to do or scary to do, maybe that means that pausing is even more important for you, because maybe it means that you are on the run from your lived experience and that you're avoiding it and you don't want to feel it. Now, if that's the case, I've been there, I'll be there again. And it's not enjoyable, it's not a nice experience. But actually allowing myself to pause and feel what we feel and experience what we're experiencing, the other side of that is a much, much better place to be. It's a much more beautiful place to be. It's a more peaceful place to be. And interestingly, it's a more energized place to be. So pausing in our projects can give space for new insights and inspiration to come through. Pausing in an interaction can give space for the energies to move between us and for that to be felt. Pausing in any endeavor helps us to regroup, allow fresh energies to come through, allow that which isn't working to drop away, allow us to reconnect to the reality of our experience. So the power of pause, maybe over the next week, explore that. Are you pausing? Are you allowing others to pause? I had a situation with a client group, which you may have heard me share before. Turned up to sit with this group. They were the senior management team in a large organization, and there were all sorts of functionalities represented, marketing, HR, finance, production, operations. They were all represented in this room. I think there were about 6 of them. We sat down, and we were going to spend the day together. I was going to teach them how to use the 7 energy levels diagnostic model within their organization. They were going to go and do their own internal research themselves inside their organization. And I was going to go and do it as well to get an external perspective. So they were expecting us to go, right, now this is how you do it. Now you do this, now you do that. Here's a template, here's some handouts, etc. Which, of course, I did have all of that with me. But I knew it was particularly important for these people, in order to actually use this model, to be able to pause. Because they were going to need to be able to pause in order to just sit there within their organization and receive the data that was coming towards them in regard to atmosphere, energy, morale, goodwill, all of those intangible but so powerful aspects of what it is for an organization to function well. So we all sat down and I said, great, the first thing we're going to do is just going to sit here for 5 minutes in silence. They then proceeded to spend 15 minutes arguing with me about why we shouldn't do this and about why this was a waste of time. They then ran down in terms of things they were saying. I sat for a moment, paused, and said, do you realize you've just spent 15 minutes arguing as to why we shouldn't spend 5 minutes sitting in silence? They were shocked. They could see the illogic of that and how bonkers that was. And they said, all right, let's do it. And we did that. Subsequently, when I was given feedback on the program, they said the program was great, Catherine, but the most memorable and the most powerful part of the entire program was those 5 minutes. And we are all very interested in the fact we were so resistant to it. Now that took place, I think that was 1999 or something like that. So that's a long time ago at this point in time. But I can still remember it because of the significance of that experience for those people. I wonder if any of those people are listening and watching right now. So hi, guys. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, the power of the pause, connect into that, explore that, enjoy. So that's all for Truth and Transcendence for today. Please give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, tell your friends. If you're watching this on a video channel, please comment below the video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.